Hi, everybody. Kurt Felski here, and excited to bring you another webinar. I think this one is pretty informative on what debate will look like moving forward and how to take advantage of the online format and make the most of it. Our guest tonight is a camp faculty member as well as a coach at Westminster. I think one of the better judges in debate, at least from my experience of being on panels with him, and certainly one of the nerdiest people you will know, especially when it comes to things technology related or any random thing that you could think of you want to do with a soldering iron. Joshua Gonzalez probably knows a few tricks and tips for it. So without further ado, I'll give the floor over to Josh.
Thanks so much, Kurt. Welcome, everyone. As I see people are still kind of trickling in. So I went through a lot of different sort of variations of what types of titles that I might want to use for this. Ultimately, I went with how not to be terrible at online debating. And I think that there's a number of really easy, intuitive, and great ways to be sort of better at this than the competition. And I think that that's one thing that's worth emphasizing, is that debate is a game ultimately that's one of relative. It's better and worse, and no such thing as best. It's a question of, can you present yourself and can you execute things in a way that are superior to your opponents? So I think online debate obviously is extremely new to all of us. It's both exciting me a ton because of the opportunities that it creates, and it's freaking me out immensely because I have to teach a lab in a month in a totally new form, in a totally new way, and then do a debate season that almost assuredly will be occurring online in the fall as well. So things are going to be a little bit weird, and we'll talk about some of that and some ways to sort of cope with that. So I didn't prepare a PowerPoint for this one. Well, I actually did prepare a PowerPoint, and then I decided I wanted to get rid of it to give a slightly analog feel to the presentation. So everything that I do when I give sort of any sort of webinar, discussion, lecture, I always like to give things in lists. So I will basically sort of list off different things and different ideas. So let's kind of I want to talk about what I think are sort of, number one, what you need to have in order to be debating online. And then along with that, some lists of some things that you might want to have. Secondly, then we'll talk about some of the challenges that online debating are going to create, and some of the things that are sort of unique, not just to online debating, but to online debating in particular in an era where COVID is such a constraint on the things that we're able to do. And then finally, I'm going to give some tips for using Zoom, which really is appearing to be the platform of choice on which most online debating is going to occur. But a lot of the tips will be useful just for any sort of video camera, microphone-based debating that's going to happen, which frankly, people are far and wide pretty bad at. So let's start with the things that you are going to want to have in order to be debating online. So number one, the things that you want to have. Number one is the basics. And the basics is you need to get a computer. Now, if you are watching this, you already have access to a computer, which is good and a great start. But truthfully, you don't need anything more than a computer that has three things I think are necessary. They're not really options. One, obviously, is a webcam. Secondly, the computer has to have a microphone of some sort. And then third, the computer, I think a mouse is sort of a non-optional piece for debating off of a computer. I would treat it essentially as an absolute necessity for doing this. The trackpad on a laptop just doesn't cut it. So that's it, really, to start with. To get online, to have some debate rounds, you need a computer. It's got to have a webcam and a microphone, and 99% you should have a mouse to be able to use. But You all knew that already because you're all watching this, so you have all of those things and you're connected, and you at least minimally were able to get on to follow a Zoom link, which means that you're in pretty good shape then. So let's talk then, number two, about what I would say would be the sort of upgrade package number one for things that you might want to add to your collection of stuff for online debating. And I'll say that this is basic external peripherals. And the basic external peripherals that I would add would be I would add an external keyboard, and B, I might add a slightly fancier mouse that has a couple extra buttons. And we'll get into some of those things in a little bit more detail later on when I start to describe some other stuff and other ways of doing things and reasons why that would be good. Keyboards are great. One thing that I would suggest is, while I would normally recommend that people people that are into any sort of gaming will know this, that mechanical keyboards are all the rage. You want to be careful that you don't use one that has an excessively loud keyboard sound. For instance, the keyboard that I have in front of me right now would be a bad keyboard to use because, and I don't know if you're going to be able to hear this or not, if I type on it, it makes a clicking sound because it has mechanical keys in it. So that's nice for when I'm typing, and it was really good for me in graduate school when I was like writing a lot, or when I'm doing any type of programming or stuff now. Got really good feedback on all of those sorts of things. Bad for online debating since it washes out the sound of me debating and gets really annoying. Fancy mice are really great because they have certain extra buttons and hotkeys that you can add. We'll get into how you might want to program some of those, not necessarily just for use in verbatim or whatever debating template that you're using, but if for use in Zoom as well, for doing things like muting and unmuting your video and your sound, and for using some of the more advanced features. Number three would be what I would call upgrade package, or the second upgrade package, which is more peripherals and things that you might want to be able to use. And these are things that I think make the debating experience a lot easier, and do a decent amount of work towards, I think, eliminating some of the challenges that happen on the sort of laptop space. Point A under three here for sort of right of the second wave of upgrades that you might want to do would be doing multiple monitors, or at least getting one external monitor that you could hook up to a laptop. The reason for doing this is that there's a limitation in the amount of space that you have and a huge new demand on screen real estate. And my assumption is that you're debating off of your computer and not off of paper. I haven't seen anyone debate on paper in a while, really, but having an external monitor is really useful because it means that you can have Zoom on one side and your debate materials on the other. And this is really helpful. I don't think I need to explain why. One thing to add for this is that you're not doing like competitive gaming on your computer, debate computer, and you're not doing any fancy video editing or color grading or anything like that, which means that you should spend on all of these things, in my mind, as little money as possible. They do not need to be fancy. Instead, they need to work, which means that they can be had for pennies on the dollar. An external monitor might sound like something that's really expensive, but in reality can cost as little as $20, especially if you start looking around on places like Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, all places that you should visit and interact with people on, with your parents, by the way, not just solo. But used equipment is totally worthwhile, or even new equipment can be had, monitors that can be totally usable for debate, can be had for as little as $30, and would be, I think, a great investment to really make things better for you. Subpoint B here under our sort of next upgrade package would be an external, well, A was an external monitor, B is an external webcam, much like what I'm using right now. I'm not using the camera built into my computer, although I am currently on a laptop. I have two different monitors, one of which is an ultra wide monitor setup, an external mouse, an external keyboard. You can see the microphone that I'm bumping into and using right here. All of which is running into a laptop, but in my sort of desk space, in my office space, I don't just use the laptop as a laptop. It's essentially a desktop in portable form that I can take with me when I go to debate tournaments or if I ever get to go outside again. An external webcam is useful because you can place it in ways that you can't place the webcam in your laptop. And again, I'll get to things like camera placement and sort of setup for online debating a little bit later in the chat here. The third thing would be an external microphone, and instead of using the microphone in your laptop. With the exception of some very high-end, very expensive laptops, the cameras and microphones that are built into most computers are, for lack of a better word, terrible. They're just not very good. So upgrading the webcam, upgrading the microphone, either with a microphone or a headset, is honestly pretty important, given that, excuse me, given that, oh, Lord, given that judges need to hear you, it's well, frankly, almost a must. Sorry, drying out here. Now, here's the problem. Everyone else has figured out that external webcams and headsets, in particular with microphones on them, are really useful for video conferencing and all sorts of other web stuff. The result of this is that they're incredibly difficult to get and really expensive right now. I haven't looked in about a week or so, but a week ago when I looked, it was real hard to get a hold of one. So I would not necessarily hold my breath that you're going to be able to find these anytime soon, but you should be checking to see if you can get them. You know, check Amazon once a week or so, check local computer stores, places like Micro Center or Best Buy, maybe like your Office Depot, Office Max, Staples, those kinds of places that carry computer stuff, to see if another webcam and some sort of like gaming headset would be useful, or rather available, period. An external microphone is another option, one that is still somewhat available. And for that, you do need a little bit more effort and setup, and wind up having a little bit more sort of investment. But again, you get even better sound quality then, although setup becomes a little different. You'll potentially need a microphone boom or some of these other things, but don't worry about that too much. But if you're desperate to get something now that's going to be better than your laptop, you're probably going with a podcasting microphone of some sort. I'm using like a $50 Blue Snowball microphone that you can see right here. I've got a pop filter in front of it, which I should add is a must. If you're using a headset or a microphone, your headset most likely comes with a little foam cover that goes over the microphone boom, the arm that comes in front of your mouth. You need to use that. The purpose for those, or for this little thing here, which if I turn sideways, you can see it's just a piece of foam. These are called pop filters. Without them, that's how you get the plosive sounds. It sounds just like the word plosive, the PL sound, which pops, and that's when you hear like the pops and you're sort of overdoing the volume basically, and overloading basically the circuit of the microphone. And it sounds terrible and is annoying and hurts everyone's ears. And by eliminating those, you sound much nicer and better, which matters a lot in debate. Item number 4. So item number 1 was the basics, which was you need a computer. Number 2 was sort of upgrades, which is an external keyboard. basically, along with maybe a fancier mouse. 3 was add a webcam, add a external monitor, add a external microphone. Item number 4 we'll call the sort of super luxury mega, hey, you're a millionaire package. I personally would find it really challenging to have Zoom running and be paying attention to Zoom and be debating off of the same computer at the same time. I think in a perfect world where I had everything that I wanted, I would want a separate computer that would connect to Zoom and would handle the video recording and audio recording and transmission and all of that sort of stuff. And my debate computer would be a distinct debate computer. And once we get to challenges, I'm going to sort of describe some of the reasons why I think that's true. But I think that if you have the ability to do that, which come this fall, once you're back in school, I think you'll have a little bit more opportunity to do using school computers or computer lab areas and stuff like that. You might be able to sort of make that work. And I think it's going to be a sort of cagey move on the part of people. If you wanted to get absolutely out of control, you wouldn't use a webcam. You would actually use an actual video camera that was then connected into your computer. I don't know how many of you do any sort of like Twitch streaming or any sort of gaming sort of stuff like that. You'd be a little bit more familiar with capture cards and things like that. This is getting into the absolutely ridiculous end of things, or an actual fancy good microphone for capturing the somewhat unusual sound that you get in debate. These would all be sort of, like I said, luxury upgrades. My guess would be maybe 2 or 3 people, nationwide are going to be doing these sorts of things. But they're on the list. So those are the things I think at different kind of tiers of how much you want to sort of put into it, both in terms of like setup time and effort and mostly just monetary expense. But I want to emphasize that item number 1 is really all you need. If you've got a computer, you can debate online. And that to me is the most exciting thing and going to be the most interesting thing about the upcoming season, is that there is a really interesting dynamic that's going to be at play here, where you don't need to get on an air, if I want to go debate at, I don't know, the Glen Brooks tournament, or if I want to go to the Berkeley tournament, I don't need to get on a plane and go to California or go to Illinois anymore. It's no different than debating where I'm at, since where I'm at is going to be online debate too. So all of this is going to open up a lot of opportunities for a lot of people that didn't have them before. There is, however, the problem of the sort of minimum bar for entry, which is going to be that computer access. Let's talk then, generally speaking, about challenges that come. And that's the first one. I think the biggest challenge that most people are going to have is going to have access to a good, reliable internet connection that's not going to drop out. One thing, cellular internet, I do not think is good enough. So if you're going to be able to use data on your cell phone to do it, I think it's not going to work. I think you need to have a hardwired landline internet connection, be it through DSL, cable, fiber, however it is that you get internet. You need a high-speed connection to wherever it is that you're doing debating. Presumably, if you're going to be at camp with us this summer, you'll be doing that from home most likely. But we will and we'll see what happens. This has been mentioned before. There's a good blog post that was up with several of the members of the Michigan staff talked about this. And I know one thing that Kurt mentioned before is a hardwire connection is really important. Wireless can get it done, but is patchy at times. And, a dropout of your internet or a slowdown of your connection is not that big of a deal if you're just browsing the web and it takes 10 extra seconds that you have to wait, or let's say 20 seconds for a web page to load. Getting 20 seconds of your debate speed zapped because your connection slows down is an absolute disaster. And so having a more consistent wired connection, I think, is really important. That is a lot easier on a desktop computer than it is on a laptop computer, given that many laptop computers do not have Ethernet ports on them anymore. Ethernet, like Ethernet dongles and those sorts of things, though, are very easily found and very inexpensively found on places like Amazon. And I would suggest getting a USB Ethernet dongle for my laptop if my laptop did not have an Ethernet port on it, and connecting via hardwire into the router that I have. Ethernet cables are also really cheaply available now. Do not spend a bunch of money on them. Go to monoprice.com and get a cheap Ethernet cable from there. Get plugged in, and don't worry about getting 30 seconds of your speech disappeared because your Wi-Fi went on the fritz when somebody turned on the vacuum at your next door neighbors. That's, I think, the first challenge, and the first one that you just have to deal with conclusively. Challenge number 2, at least for this summer, and maybe for some of the debating in the fall, depending on how this COVID thing plays out, you and your partner are not going to be in the same place. And you are not going to be in the same physical space, and that is going to create some difficulties. There's 2 things I think that you need to do. Thing number 1, you need to set up a way to communicate with one another. Thing number 2 is you need to set up a way to collaborate with one another in a way that you were not going to be able to do, or rather, I'm sorry, you're going to need to do these in ways that you haven't been doing before. You used to just sit down with your partner in the room to have the debate rounds. Now, not happening. Not safe, not a good idea, definitely not going to be allowed. It's the whole reason we're doing this online this summer. So let's talk first about communication. I think there are a number of ways to communicate online that are easy and free. 3 examples. 1 is Discord. Secondly, you can use Facebook. Through Messenger, you can just use a video chat or an audio chat. Google has, I think it's called Google Meet now. They constantly are reinventing and renaming it. There's a bunch of different things. You can use Skype. That would be the most obvious one to be able to talk to these things. But here's a problem. You're going to be connected to Zoom. And when you're connected to Zoom, Zoom's going to want to be using your webcam. Zoom's going to be wanting to use your microphone. It's going to be, and as a result, these other things are going to be locked out. So, a couple solutions. First solution is, this is the reason why I personally would, if I had the ability, want to be using a second computer. One exclusively for Zoom, and then another one that I use to do my debating off of, and to be able to constantly communicate with my partner. That would be great. Especially because with all of these different sort of telephony applications or video conferencing applications, they're all free as well. So if you're using the internet connection and you have a reasonably fast connection, which most people do if they have broadband access nowadays, certainly fast enough to support 2 streams, 1 Zoom and then 1 for communication with your partner, you're going to be in fine shape. And you'll be able to do that. But again, necessitates a second computer. The good news is that most of you have a second computer already. And that is in the form of your cell phone. I think the vast majority of people now have smartphones, and they are perfectly capable of running a telephony application. I would not use my phone as my Zoom or debate stream computer. I would instead use it basically as an intercom that I could be in constant communication with my partner. So I'd open up a Google, it used to be Hangouts, but it's a Google Meet now, or I'd open up a Discord chat, an audio chat, or any of these sorts of things. And that way I could talk to my partner. The other thing is you can easily and should mute Zoom when you're not the one doing the speaking at that moment in the debate round, which means that you can be talking louder and more openly with your partner now than you ever could before in a debate room. The second subpoint under this second challenge of partnership is you need a way to collaborate with your partner since you're not sitting with one another. I think there are a bunch of different technologies that can make a lot of really great sort of additions for this. And honestly, once you come back to in-person debating, once you've used these sorts of things, you're not going to go back to like flash drives or anything like that. The first one, all of you have heard of, I'm sure, which is Dropbox. It's a great way to archive stuff. I don't personally think it's a tremendous way of sharing debate documents and things like that. I think that there's some better technologies that are available, but at a minimum, Dropbox is great. It's free, it's reliable, everyone has it and uses it. Dropbox, terrific. That's one way to collaborate and share stuff. Second is a competitor to Dropbox, which is just called plainly Box. And so Box is another alternative, slightly better integration with different sort of desktop applications and whatnot. But think of it like Dropbox. Both of these, again, are totally adequate. I don't think that there's a need for you to do anything more than these, although I think there is a need at a minimum to have a Dropbox that you share, but you already have one of those that you likely do that with your partner. But let's talk about some upgrades, because frankly, we're using 10-year-old technology in debate and we could be doing way cooler. And the way cooler alternative is a technology that Microsoft has had for a while, which is called SharePoint. And it's integrated into Microsoft's competitor to Dropbox, which is called Microsoft OneDrive. You get one of these whenever you set up your Windows account, when you turn on your computer for the first time. It has enough storage space to hold more than enough debate files. And the great thing is it allows for simultaneous co-authoring of Microsoft Office documents, particularly Word documents, by you and anyone you share those documents with. The reason that it's going to be meaningful is, let's say you were giving a 1AC, and like happens in at least 50% of the rounds that I judge, you get through you're the 1A, you get the 1AC, you've got 30 seconds left in your speech. You will typically look to your partner and say, hey, I need more cards before you get to that point, and they'll bring up their computer with some extra evidence for you to read, to add a couple extra preamps or something else. Well, that ain't happening now, because you might be in Missouri and your partner is in, well, I mean, it could be in Taiwan for all we know. It doesn't really matter. You're definitely not in the same place. They're not handing you a computer because they haven't invented teleportation yet, which would be cool when they do, but hasn't happened. So you need some way to, in real time, collaborate and share documents, which is why I would recommend using OneDrive by Microsoft and using the co-authoring features that are available, which means that both you and your partner have the exact same document open on your computers and can both edit that document. And in real time, the changes that one person makes will become visible to the other person. So you say to your partner, hey, I'm going to need some more cards. And they just paste those cards into the bottom of the document, which then magically appear on your document as well. And it's a much better way for sharing stuff. It's used very widely. You can imagine how it's like used in businesses if, say, more than one person, as they typically are, working on a report or as an Excel spreadsheet or something. It's really reliable, very good technology, and again, totally free. I don't know why more people don't use this. It's awesome. You should be doing it. The sort of third challenge, I think, with most people is that they are, generally speaking, have some room to grow at their ability to use computers. I'm stunned at the number of people that I see still using copy and paste to move cards around in verbatim when they're doing their debating in rounds, when in fact there are some features that allow for a much more efficient movement of blocks and evidence around. I'm equally stunned by sort of how much people are oftentimes not making the best use of things like advanced search features in Google or other search engines and stuff like that. And these are some of the things that I think I most enjoy teaching at summer institutes and invest some serious time in, is how to really, let search engines and the internet do your research for you and not the other way around. So much of computer and information technology is supposed to make things easier for us instead of harder. And I think a lot of people let technology make things harder for them instead of making it easier. We will, you're tuning into this podcast right now, we will, over the course of the summer, have some great opportunities and some more webinars and ways to sort of learn, where we'll be doing some screen sharing and things like that over that. But finally, I think the thing that people are most bad at, and the thing I would like to take the last sort of 10 minutes before we go to questions here, is I think people are terrible at Zoom. And I want you to be better at Zoom than the competition, because frankly, people are not good enough at this yet for online debating. I have 12 tips to make Zoom better, and I'm going to show some of them as they sort of happen. So, without further ado, tip number one for Zoom is your camera should be at eye level, so that when you look at your camera, it's like looking someone in the face. This is more challenging with a laptop, obviously, if it's sitting on the desk. This is why I think you need an external keyboard and an external mouse so that you can get your laptop raised up so that the webcam in it is at eye level with you. It's like not acceptable at this point to get the horrible view of the webcam where it's like staring up and like, you know, shiny, you know, like it's like looking at the bottom of your neck, and it's you know, it's just, again, there's all these horrible shadows behind you and all of that. We're not doing that anymore. You're getting your camera up at eye level so that you can look the camera and your judges and competitors in the eye and have an actual communicative experience with them, as opposed to them just being observers to you, sort of glowing in the background of a screen, looking like some sort of basement dweller. That's point number two. Look at the camera, just like I'm doing right now. It's a little creepy and uncomfortable at first, and you'll even notice that I've been darting my eyes away frequently and stuff like that, but look into the camera, particularly when you're speaking in a debate round. I can't emphasize enough the fact that you need to make your audience, in this case, the judge or judges for your debate, feel as if you are talking to them. And again, that they're not just an observer in some other event. It's really easy to do just by maintaining eye contact. And the best thing about a Zoom call or a Zoom webinar in particular, as opposed to some other sort of, you know, being physically in a room, is that if I'm in a room and I have an audience of, let's say I'm in an elim and there's 30 people in the room because I'm like a big deal and I'm breaking a new AF or something, I can only maintain eye contact with one person at a time in a physical space. Over Zoom, I can have a reasonably intimate connection that's done with eye contact and nonverbal cues with every single person at once just by looking into the camera. So tip number one was put your camera at the eye level. Tip number two is look at the camera. Tip number three is to get your microphone as close to your mouth as possible. Now, this is a little weird at first, but with a little bit of trickery, you can do it so it's not just absolutely in the way. If I was actually recording the audio for this, I would have my microphone, honestly, probably about this close, way up close to your face. That's the way that audio is recorded for things like podcasts and stuff like that. That's how you get that good sound. That's a reason that a headset's really good to have, is because it puts the microphone close to your mouth. So get that microphone close up to your mouth and use a pop filter when you do it so that we don't hear all the big plosive and sibilant sounds, which are the s and pl sounds, which will, by a closely mic'd talking, you'll get those unless you do some of these other things. Tip number four is light your face, not necessarily the room. Light your face and not the room. There's a few ways you can do this. The easiest way is that if the sun is out, sit in front of a window. Real easy. Sit in front of an open window that sun is coming into, not direct sunlight. I'm not saying like get roasted there in the sun, but sit in a window, and it will change the way that you look and appear to make you much more natural and attractive. Not anything like, woo, attractive, but like, you know, better. It's a better look than one with just like awful humming fluorescent lights. And to illustrate the difference, I'm going to open the blinds in my room right now. With the color changes, I look a little bit more natural. I don't have a really reddish skin tone anymore that's coming from the artificial light. Instead, it's a natural sunlight that's hitting my face. In fact, it's like they call it the magic hour here right now. It's right before sunset, so it's even better. and it's a better light overall. The alternative to that is just to put a lamp of some sort on your desk that shines more light on your face as opposed to lighting the area behind you. You want to be the focus of the presentation and not all the other things around you. To that end, tip number 5 is that you need to manage your background in Zoom. You can't just have anything behind you. You need to pick a good spot from which to be doing your debating. Moreover, Zoom, of course, you probably figured out now, has a great feature, which is the ability to superimpose backgrounds. Now, you don't need a green screen or anything to do this. It can work out just pretty well. So I've prepared a nice virtual background for us to use right here. Ta-da! Go blue. You can get a virtual background. It can be managed. Now, I don't have a terribly good backdrop behind me, so I'm getting some weird sort of halo. See, like I can make the room kind of appear here. But Zoom does a good enough job with this for you to make it not super distracting to do it and do some sort of other stuff. And I think that doing something like this here, where you have a little bit of promotion, your school probably has a logo of some sort, put it up there, have a little, have a little hype video going in the background. You can do videos too. It doesn't have to be a static background. But create a background, or you can use one if you want. You can be on the beach, or in front of the northern lights, which I don't get, but whatever. But we're going to stick with this one for now because this is the Michigan debate camp. So, and I'm a Michigan alum, coincidentally. So, like I said, go blue. Some more lab specific and sort of interaction specific parts. You don't always have to talk in order to get things across, because you've got a new communication medium with Zoom. And in order to do that, the best thing, and all of you, I am sure, being teenagers in this day and age, are pretty good at this already, is to use emojis. Zoom has a bunch of reaction emojis built into it, and you should be using those to be participating in the conversations that are going on, even if you're not necessarily speaking up. It's a great way. A thumbs up, a smiley face, a frowny face, a thumbs down, all these sorts of things are good ways to be part of the conversation and to be interacting with people and to communicate stuff. Raising your hand, there's the raise the hand button. I see that we've got a couple questions already in here that we'll be getting to soon. That was tip number 6. Number 7 is you can use your space bar within Zoom to mute and unmute different parts of it. So for instance, if I hit my space bar right now, I can, well, I'm a presenter right now, so I can't do that, but you can bring yourself in and out of mute using the space bar. Now, tip number 8 is to learn the keyboard shortcuts that are available. And literally just Google Zoom keyboard shortcuts. And I need to hurry this up. I need to wrap this up pretty quick here because I want to save as much time as possible for questions. So learn the keyboard shortcuts, use them, program them to mouse buttons in your fancy mouse that has buttons on it. And as a result, you can manipulate Zoom very quickly without having to be constantly pulling down different menus, minimizing or maximizing windows and stuff like that, particularly if you're only working on a single computer. Tip number 9 is hide non-video participants. There's a command available in Zoom. You can say hide non-video participants, and then you're good to go. That means that their windows get shrunk down. And as a result, there is, you don't need to have them cluttering your screen if you're not going to get any video information from them. Number 10, turn on the beauty filters that are available. You don't want to see what I look like without the Zoom filters, but you can actually have it smooth out your appearance a little bit. It does a pretty good job. I don't see any reason not to use it. Number 11, and I'm actually going to make this the last one, is record the meeting to your computer. Zoom has a recording feature. Do the recording, make it work, save it. Save all of your debates, save some of your lab time and stuff like that within certain limits. I know some of you might not be able to do that, and then kind of there's certain legal implications and stuff like that. But where you can reasonably record all your stuff, save it, go back, redo speeches, record your meetings, know what's going on, be able to go back to them. I kind of hurried through some of those Zoom tips right there, but I wanted to kind of get through this to leave some time for questions because I know that we've got some that were popping up in here. Let's bring Kurt back in and see what's going on.
Hey, everybody. Well, thanks a lot for that, Josh. And just say at the outset that we plan on producing another guide of some things that we've tested and recommendations of what to buy. But Josh is definitely right that some of these things you can get on the secondhand market, and we obviously don't include links to those in our guide because we have no idea what you can get in different places, but certainly helpful for that. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A. I answered a few of them as we went along just because they were kind of specific questions. But the first one that we have is from Daniel. And Daniel asks, how essential do you think high quality web cameras and microphones are? And do they have an impact on judge psychology for the impacts, the purposes of clarity, etc.? So I think before Josh jumps in, we should just quickly notice that I'm using a webcam on a laptop right now. And if you're just thinking about it from a psychological perspective, or who you think is probably a little bit more in command of technology right now, what do you see behind me? You see a chair and a diploma that's falling out of its frame, and then another part of a diploma, and that's about it. Whereas if I had my webcam on my desktop pointing down at me, you would get the full frame of my office, and it would probably look a little bit better. And I think Josh can probably talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends what you mean by high quality web camera and microphone. I mean, it's unfortunately even low quality webcams are really expensive right now because of the incredible demand that the fact that everyone has to work from home nowadays has created. My expectation is that is going to ease over the next month or so. I hope, and I don't know if any of us have had a chance to do some Amazon searches on webcams or anything like that while I've been talking. Chime in, with a question or something to say like, oh, I found this one for this or something. But I mean, I've had this one just from other online teaching and stuff for a couple of years now. I mean, and it was like $30 or something like that. It's I mean, that's nothing to laugh at. I would myself love to have $30 extra right now. That would be really cool. But it's also not a huge investment. And in terms of microphones and stuff like that, I think the way to go right at first is if you can get a gaming headset that has a microphone boom on it like Kurt's using. That's going to give you the best bang for your buck in terms of sound quality. And does it have an effect on judge psychology? You ask it, does it have an effect on judge psychology, or is it just for clarity? I would say those two things aren't even different. Clarity is massively related to judge psychology, and just their ability to flow you in the first place, which I would say is less than psychology and more just your ability to debate. So, yeah, I think the better you can get, the better off you'll be in that sense, but they're also not essential. It's nice though, because it does give you the ability to control things a little bit more.
All right. Our next question from Anonymous, it asks, should we debate on a stand for online debating? If so, how do we keep the camera at eye level? And I'll chime in on the first part and leave the value of an external webcam to Josh on this. If you check out the interview that we did with the finalists from this year's TOC, this was probably 4 weeks ago. It's on HS Impact. They had very different perspectives on the value of having a stand. But I think they all said that they liked having a stand, but it was a question of how do you set up that desk around you. Josh probably has some ideas about how to do that.
I think I would suggest letting sort of posture and just mechanics dictate how you're going to do it. the most important thing, and again, this is something that I'll cover at length with my lab this summer, is that you you cannot bend yourself over and shorten and compress your lungs when you're debating. For projecting your voice right, for using all of your voice and all of those things, you gotta have a straight back. Now you can do that in a chair, and that works fine, but standing up is an easier way to do that. The next question is then, how do I get my camera at eye level? Well, you could do something like using a tripod. You could put it on top of a dresser or something. Basically anything that gets it lifted up. Because the cool part is that no one knows what's off camera, and trust me, you do not want to see what is off camera for me right now. Well, I don't know. You may want to, but I do not want you to see like what I've just messed my desk and my office space is right now. I like cleaned up everything that was going to be visible on the camera, and then was like, and we'll use a background too, to sort of eliminate all of that clutter and everything. So how you get it up there doesn't really matter. Just elevate that camera, get that at eye level. It's the difference. It's huge. I can't. It's palpable. You'll see. Yeah.
And the important thing about thinking about this right now, we're still a few weeks out from the start of camp, is that it gives you time to kind of play around with the way that your setup's going to work for that. And thanks to Isaac Steiner, who shared a bunch of tips on different components or peripherals that can be used. These look pretty nice because they look like they're lists about what is the best. I found when I was doing research for our tech guide for the TOC and the guide that we're putting out for the camp, a lot of this stuff, good technology is ubiquitous and it's cheap. Yeah, at least in comparison to what a laptop provides. So because you're not recording podcasts or movies, you're going to get by pretty easily. It's just important to get some of those. Anonymous asks, if we don't own a stand at home, are there household items that we can use to substitute?
Yes. And I would say just about anything, because the nice thing about this is that just you're in control of the camera framing too, so you can cut off whatever is, you can make it so it's tilted up just so long as it's eye level, so it only captures about this much space here, and whatever your computer or whatever's propped up on is not going to be visible. It's I don't know. Kurt, you have some ideas?
If I turned around to show you what my external monitor looks like right now, you would see 8 or 9 large textbooks and some novels. I think you can get pretty creative. And you just think about how you've done many debates with just like chairs on a table, and that general setup. But there's also, because, and everybody is emphasizing this who's judged any debates from the TOC, that debate online is going to be slower. So the need to stand up is not entirely there. So if you're not comfortable with the standing situation, there's probably no need to really move forward with it. Another question, it was asked by Anonymous if you'll be required to have your video on during lectures. The answer to that is most likely no, just because you should be paying attention to the lectures, but it'll probably be lab dependent in regards to that.
That was actually on the Google form that was circulated. There was a great question, I thought, from Garrett Baumert asked. He said he wanted to know how the schedule would work. He said, will it be the same as camp would be if we were there in person? And I know for my lab, at least, the answer is definitely not.
Yeah, and we will be rolling out more and more details about what the camp schedule will look like, but a prototype schedule is up on the Canvas page to look at. Most mornings will begin with a camp-wide lecture, either from a camp faculty member or an expert in many different fields related to the topic and just debate. And then, but that there will be a Q&A session that people can chime into when they want. But the expectation is that you'll be able to watch the webinar in advance of lab in the afternoon, and then some structured activities in the evening. So similar to what you had before, but a little bit more understanding of kind of how much time people want to spend on Zoom.
Yeah, I mean, and I can't, I like, there's no way I'm going to ask a student to sit, to be on in front of their computer in the exact same spot for 12 hours. If we had, because a typical day at debate camp, we usually have not with mealtime taken out, but we do have, 10 to 12 hours of time involved in things from morning till till you're like free kind of stuff like that. But that's in like multiple different locations and stuff. There's just no, like, I'm not sitting in this chair for 12 hours. I'm not sitting in this chair for 10 hours. It's not happening. We're going to be quite dynamic in the way that we change things up. And for me, it's really exciting because it gives me a chance to do a bunch of different things and sort of new things that maybe weren't possible in person, but can, lots of different sort of, gamifying things, all sorts of different sort of interactive content and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, I'm really excited about the things that I've prepared so far and look forward to more of it. So it's going to be a different, but I think it's going to be really cool is what it's going to be.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for chiming in tonight, and Josh for giving up a good deal of his time. I'm sure he's got plenty of things he'd like to be doing out and about in St. Louis right now.
Oh yeah, because everything's open, so no.
We will have more of these in the run-up to camp, so please keep an eye out for them. We'll post about them on HS Impact as well as on our social media pages, which we can be found at Michigan Debate on any of those. And we look forward to talking to you in the future. Thanks.
Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Go Blue.
Go Blue.